So one last session before lunch, and this is the Visionary Roundtable on navigating the US PV market. So that bears a little bit of explanation because it's a way that we structured this conference that's a bit different from anything we've done before and probably from most that you see. The idea here is that we've got 4 themes to this conference. The first was navigating the US PV market. That was this morning, and then we have 3 others, each one comprising half a day. And attached to each one of those, either at the beginning or the end, depending, we have a Visionary Roundtable. The idea with the Visionary Roundtable is, generally speaking, to take kind of a bird's eye view on the topic. The conference is intended to be really deep down in the weeds, and you were all here this morning and you heard us talk very specifically about issues in individual state markets. But the idea here is to also take a broader view. Perhaps a more long-term view, because there's so much going on in the immediate term that I think it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. And so to that end, we have 4 great panelists here who can speak to the bigger picture for us from 4 very different perspectives. One note here is that TJ Diora, the director of the Colorado Governor's Energy Office, was unable to make it. There were important meetings to be had in Colorado, but fortunately, Todd Glass, who's a partner at Wilson Sonsini, was able to step in, and I've been on a panel with Todd before, and he's great, so we're excited to have him. So let me first just introduce the panelists. I'll let them provide a bit more of introduction after that, and then we'll dive right in. We have Yuan, who's the CMO and Senior VP at Astronergy. We have Rhone Resch, the President and CEO of SIA and our main conference partner here. We have Tim Hemig, who's the VP of Solar Development at NRG, and Todd Glass, as I mentioned before. So why don't we start by doing this. We'll start here with Alan, then go down the line and have each of you introduce your companies a little bit more, your role in the US market, and give me your 30-second take on where you see the US market today and how you think it might be different 5 years from now.
Okay, thank you very much. Very nice to be here. My name is Yuan. I'm in charge of sales marketing activity overall for Astronergy globally. Astronergy is a manufacturer of thin film and crystalline, both panels, both kind of technology and panels. In the meantime, the whole group, we are part of the Chin group, also a manufacturer, 30 years old manufacturer of electrical components, including inverters and transformers, cables. So it's one of the largest private sector enterprises in China, the whole China market. And the company was 3.4 billion in sales overall, and also with 30,000 employees. It's one of the largest company in China. And we think the U.S. market is quite different than European market. It's like earlier we talked about 50 states and the 50 market. It's absolutely true. However, we also think U.S. market is difficult, but it's more sustainable market. So once you spend time, effort, digging in this market, it's higher and better chance to get successful. It's different than certain market. One day when the government switch off the FIT switch and the whole market shut down. I think in the U.S. we won't see that. It's difficult, but we're going to be spend our time and effort, and it's worth of investment.
Should be on.
Okay, it is. Thanks, Shayle. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to GTM for inviting me to this panel, and congratulations on a great event. My name is Rhone Resch, and I'm the president of SIA, the Solar Energy Industries Association. We're in Washington, D.C., and we are the kind of the national voice of solar, both in Washington and certainly with the media and all the rest. So I think SIA's role in the industry is twofold. It's not only in advocating for policies at the federal level, but it's certainly helping to craft the message of the industry, helping to distribute data on what's happening within the markets, and ultimately trying to give the industry an element of professionalism, both externally and internally, so that we as an industry continue to grow in a very sustainable way, both with policies but also through ingenuity. And it's funny, in Angiolo's comments earlier on the last panel, he mentioned all the different trade associations and all the rest, and he's right, it is a little bit fragmented. And I'm happy to say that going forward, we are merging with the Solar Alliance, and SIA we'll really be focusing a lot of our efforts going forward at the state level and coordinating with the state SEIA chapter. So as an industry that is, I think, developed and evolved in 50 different states, almost as if it were 50 different countries, I think you're going to see us in the next 12 to 18 months really come together and speak with one voice across multiple platforms. So I'm excited about that because I think that is absolutely key for us to grow our markets. It's not that I think solar can grow organically, it can, but we now have adversaries, we now have opponents, we now have people who are actually pushing back against greater use of solar, and it's not just the utilities anymore, it's, it's well-funded oil and gas industry, coal industry, and others kind of on a conservative bent who don't want to see greater use of solar for whatever reason. So being organized and collective, I think, is critical. The market today, I actually agree with Angiolo's remarks with respect that it's stable. And the reason why is because we're diversified. We're not over-dependent upon a one national feed-in tariff. We have multiple layers, the federal ITC and 1603 and a bunch of other things at the federal level, then state, and then local. And it makes it a little bit more complicated to navigate, but I think we figured it out. And because we have smart people in this room and beyond within this industry, we'll continue to grow. And our estimate, when we look forward 5 years down the road, I'll even go shorter than that, just looking at 2015, we expect the market in the United States to be about 10 gigawatts annually. That's the industry goal. That's what we're striving towards. We've got a roadmap in order to be able to get there. A lot of it is policy, but there's a lot of other factors which we'll talk about, like financing and attracting kind of the institutional players that need to be involved with the solar industry to help us grow. So that's what I would kind of say is that we have a 10 gigawatt goal, and probably by the end of next year or early 2013, we'll be the fastest, not only the fastest growing, but the largest source of new electricity installations on an annual basis, which is a pretty significant contribution to the electricity marketplace in the United States, and it's right where solar should be.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Tim Hemig. I'm the utility scale development lead for Energy Solar. I'm actually based in Carlsbad, down in San Diego, and appreciate the invitation up here and to talk with all of you today. And NRG's been around a long time. We're a very large wholesale and retail power provider across the U.S., about 25,000 megawatts of generation, and including about 86 megawatts of solar actually operating today as well. And I think we entered the solar market about 3 years ago, and I've been part of that effort since we started. And kind of born and raised a Californian, so when we talk about state issues, there's actually, even within California, there's a lot of kind of regional and city and county issues that are so different, even within the state. So it's just kind of lived that world for my career, and it's very exciting. You also mentioned, Rhone, about kind of the goals in the solar industry. Well, NRG actually has 1 gigawatt of new solar in construction right now as well. So we're intend to be in this space for a long time, and very excited to be part of it right now. And so I'm just really a simple developer, chasing the deals wherever they are. And obviously, as the market, is changing quickly and new markets are opening, I look forward to hearing from my colleagues here and some good questions from you all as well that kind of prompt some ideas in my mind. But, I see, the global market as well, all right? There's, I think, just what you hear in internationally drawn, from the supply of panels out there, there's a lot of things that are going to happen on pricing in the near future. And then even within California, you have kind of the 33% RPS now applies to a larger group of people besides the standard investor-owned utilities. So there's a whole lot of opportunity, and for solar to kind of get into the retail space as well. So I think that's really what I have my eye on in future growth for solar.
Great, thanks. Again, my name is Todd Glass. I'm a partner at Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati. I'm an energy lawyer, and I do energy project development and finance. For about the last 5 years, I've predominantly 90% been focused on developing solar projects of all sorts of different varieties across technologies, whether it be PV, CSP, CPV, and even some solar thermal projects. Wilson Sonsini is perhaps the leading law firm in technology and venture finance and other types of finance around technology. And about 3-4 years ago, well, I guess now 4 years ago, they decided to add an energy technology component, and I'm part of that expansion, and very proud to be here and happy to be here with you today. If I look, actually, before I look forward 5 years, I'd like to say that, the press and the politics in Washington are becoming tough for solar, and I think it's because we're becoming so legitimate that they're aiming for us now. And there are even some that have predicted that solar is going to die a death or do something like that. But really what I would characterize the solar industry in the U.S. as being really just sort of struggling through the end of its rather messy and dramatic adolescence. If you think about it, we've had rapid growth. We've had innovative new business models. We've had a lot of new technology. We've had a lot of newness, a lot of even the technology. If you heard Sunrun up here before, one of our clients, they approached this, and Solar City, and they approached developing the new market in a distributed fashion with an idealism that I don't think many other sectors in the energy industry started with. So you've got a lot of things that are sort of working their way through, and I think that the industry is coming through the other end. And there are some messy, dramatic things like Solyndra and other bankruptcies, but if you unpeel those things and you find out that this market and within the solar market is becoming much more competitive within it, costs are coming down rapidly, PPA prices are hugely competitive, and you throw that all together, and I think you're looking out over the next 5 years that we're on par, or at least we can see that goal, and I think that Rhone was mentioning, and I think we're going to get there, but there's going to have to be a lot of good hard work. There's going to have to be a lot of good financing, which is, I know, what we're going to talk about this afternoon, and but I'm bullish.
Great. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about that's sort of broad level, but I wanted to start with a couple of related questions for Rhone, and then we can open it up if anybody else has thoughts on it, because there's a topic that's been popping up here and there, and there's a question for me this morning that you'll be able to answer better than I, which was 1603, because we're coming down to the wire, and the question is, do we have prospects for extension? If so, what form might it take? What does it look like? And then broader than that, maybe you could talk a little bit about what the political landscape is like in Washington for solar in general, and to what extent it's changed over the past couple of months.
Great, thanks, Shayle. Yeah, 1603. Do people in the audience care about 1603? I mean, if you do, raise your hands. Come on, I want to see some hands. I mean, it's a big deal, right? I mean, we give a shit about this, and we need to step up as an industry and make sure Congress knows that. Because we're an industry with over 100,000 people. There's 5,000 companies. We're the fastest growing sector in our economy today. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable. And yet, obviously, Solyndra has tainted certainly this industry with respect to the press and to a certain extent in Washington. But to answer Shayle's question, I think we have a very good chance of getting 1603 extended. There's been a lot of people who've come out publicly, a lot of analysts who don't work in Washington who say there's no chance of getting 1603 extended. They're wrong. And we were having the same conversation at this point last year with a lot of people saying you're not going to get 1603 extended, and we did. And we did it in a form that's very kind of classic Washington, unfortunately, which isn't going to be a bill that's titled the 1603 extension. It's going to be a bill that has strong bipartisan support across many different industries. It's going to be a tax extenders bill. And when I look at the super committee today and what they're working on, I actually think they're going to have an agreement. I think by a week from today, they're going to be pretty darn close, or they're going to actually have an agreement with some revenue raisers that's going to support an extenders bill. Now, think about this, an extenders bill. This is a tax extension piece of legislation that applies across, in this case, probably about 100 different tax provisions that are in the code today. This is the R&D tax credits, ethanol. I mean, you go down the line, there's a lot of different industries that are supported by Republicans and or Democrats that are going to be included in this provision. The question ultimately is there enough money to pay for all of it? The answer is no way, not even close. But I think we'll get pretty, I think we'll at least get a lot of wind in the sails of actually getting this thing extended. So what happens next? So they come back, they get an agreement. We'll probably see an extenders bill be created in December. Probably won't get passed in December, to be honest with you. It might be January or February. So we're looking at a retroactive kind of extension of the 1603 program. Using the playbook from last year, we have our champions, super champions, including on both sides of the aisle. And they've already said, listen, if there's an extenders bill, 1603 is going to be in it. So when you're kind of analyzing the prognosis of 1603, you have to really look at Congress's ability to get anything done. And so in the last year or so, it's been pretty limited. And but I do think that where we're trending right now with the super committee is positive, and that could open the door for an extension. To answer your kind of longer, so did that answer the 1603 thing? Okay, yeah. So I'm pretty positive about it. We've got a great coalition of companies and industries that are involved. You know, those people who raised your hands, you're going to be getting an email from SEIA. This is the only spam you're going to get from this conference, but you're going to be getting an email from SEIA and saying, we have a letter. Sign your company up, put your name on this letter. Let's show Congress that actually we care about this. It's small businesses, it's large businesses. This is a policy that works. And the great news about 1603 is it doesn't cost a lot. It's not one of these super expensive extensions, but it delivers incredible results. So we've got great arguments on our side for why 1603 should be extended. Broader speaking, in Washington, you know, I was at a fundraiser for Majority Leader Reid a couple of months ago, when we were talking about 1603. He said, Rhone, you've got to fix Solyndra first. And so until we get past Solyndra, it's going to be difficult for Congress to really focus on other kind of pro-renewable policies. Now, the problem is Solyndra is going to play out till November 6th of next year for the presidential election. And so what we need to do is make sure that we're at least keeping a firewall between Solyndra and the rest of the industry. And we spend a lot of time at SEIA doing just that, mostly in the media. You know, mostly with the conservative publications, but just making sure that, that the story doesn't say, well, if Solyndra doesn't work, then the rest of the industry doesn't work. And we saw a lot of that in the beginning, but we haven't seen much of that until recently, which is great. But ultimately, what we have found in our work, both on the Hill and our public opinion polling, is that there's still strong support for solar. Even Cliff Stearns, Representative Stearns, who is the chairman of the investigation subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce Committee, has said he likes solar. Solar's cool, or solar's interesting, and you know, that he supports certain provisions for solar, which is great. So what we're finding is again, a lot of interest in delving deeper into the political issues surrounding Solyndra. I don't know if there's going to be an energy bill this next year. There's a good possibility there could be, which opens the door for a lot of the other policies that we're advocating for. There may be a tax bill as well. Oftentimes you do see a new tax provision bill that's included in the year of an election. So when we start talking about financing later, stuff like master limited partnerships and some of the adjustments to the tax code that would make that group of investors available to solar is a real possibility. Senator Bingaman, who is the chairman of the Senate Energy Committee, is retiring. And so he's going to be interested in doing one more big energy bill before he goes out. And in a lot of cases, he'll be able to get certain provisions in as kind of a let's just say, a swan song kind of effort. So my opinion is it more challenging in Washington than ever before? Absolutely. But is it more of an opportunity for solar to step up and show who we are as an industry? Absolutely. And that's what we're doing, and I think we're going to be much better because of it. Sometimes you got to get beat up a little bit in order to get respect in Washington. We're going through the beating up phase right now, and I think we'll command a lot of respect after we pull through with this based on the facts of what's actually happening in the industry.
Anyone else have thoughts on the political landscape?
I'm going to just add a little bit, and I do think that SEIA and Rhone have been really helpful on the Solyndra front and on the 1603 front. I would just come at it from the perspective of people trying to develop and finance projects. 1603 is, while it may not be expensive to the federal government, is hugely helpful for those of us trying to get projects done. Not having to tangle, and I know Mitt's out there somewhere, and we've got tax equity coming up, but not having to tangle and negotiate with tax equity on each one of these deals, that's a good thing. And the returns that tax equity is going to be asking for are higher than what it was prior to the financial crisis. So to the extent that we can get that, it makes things a lot easier and it makes things a lot smoother. And as we're coming through the messiness and legitimacy, if we can keep this mechanism going for another year or two, and I'm perhaps not quite as hopeful as you, but I'm rooting for it and willing to support, it would be a really helpful thing for this industry to just get to that early adulthood that I was talking about.
And just to clarify, I still think it can happen this year. You know, that they're not kicking this can down the road. It really depends what happens in the next week with the super committee. We'll have much better intel as to what the possibility of getting an extenders bill passed this year. But that's the headline you're going to be looking for, you know, as you're looking at the news. An tax extenders bill. Not very sexy, but certainly that's the vehicle for 1603.
Great. Let me jump to Alan for a second, because you know, Astronergy is a major global supplier, but actually a relatively new entrant to the U.S. market, at least compared to, you know, European markets and others. I wonder how it looks to you from somewhat on the outside, entering the U.S. market and then having Solyndra and a trade petition and a lot of uncertainty around the future of the U.S. market and how it's going to be made up. How do you as a supplier kind of handle that?
Thank you. Like I said earlier, the U.S. market, it is a difficult market, and it's not made not for every single manufacturer. However, I have to really dig in and understand it. For us, we do have a team in the market, understand from the financial industry, you know, banking industry, and also talking to the developers. And our overall strategy is how to enable our partners. We are large manufacturers, not only doing panels, both crystalline and thin film. We're also electrical components. So we kind of doing a project in Asia Pacific with everything we build within the group. So we give a one warranty, one service. So we are talking to partners in the United States, developer or investor, customers, basically say, how can we help? How can we provide the whole system? Other than that, what else can we work together in order to make you successful? I think that's our overall strategy. And we have, in the meantime, the most important thing for a solar company is to stay healthy in the current market condition. So that's why we are very well diversified globally. So we will, and within the group, from the product point of view, also very well diversified. Being a strong manufacturer is very important to our client, saying 10 years from now, where are you going to be? In the meantime, how do we deal with the problem today? So that's our overall strategy, enabling.
Okay, Tim, let me ask you a slightly more specific question, one that I think is interesting. You know, from my perspective, NRG's entrance into solar and now very aggressive plays in solar, that's an extraordinarily positive sign for the solar industry generally, because NRG is such an important player in the energy industry. The question I have for you, though, is, you know, you have this big deal that you're doing with a huge portfolio of distributed rooftop projects, and if I understand right, a good portion of those, if not all of those, are expected to be utility offtake, or at least the first few are. That's a market segment we haven't seen a whole lot of in the U.S. You know, we've had a few utilities do some offtake of rooftop projects, but not a whole lot. I'm wondering, you know, how do you see that growth playing out? And if you're a rooftop project bidding against a ground mount project or a larger project for a utility offtake, you know, can you compete there?
Yeah, very good question. In fact, I'm probably the wrong guy to answer that. Within NRG, I'm the utility scale guy. I'm actually, in fact, competing with that on the utility scale ground mount. So it's very interesting, but question, because you know, NRG is absolutely committed to, you know, diving deep into the distributed solar space, and you know, from the top down in our company, really believe in bringing solar to the retail customers as well. And so really my focus is on, you know, the more standard utility municipal power authorities and bringing utility scale projects. But where we think we can, you know, compete in that space is really with actually being very strong in the utility scale space and learning how to drive installation costs down, and then really balance the system cost drivers, and really understanding how to you know, do better. In fact, NRG is going to be very focused on doing some of our own construction and fabrication ourselves to really drive those innovations and make installation costs lower. So we're going to be able to bring that knowledge to the distributed solar space and be able to do, hopefully, a lot better on that level as well. And then, you know, when you have a partnership and you have kind of a large focus with that Project AMP has, and has, you know, a partner like Prologis with, you know, the scale of the rooftops and the repeatability is a factor as well. So we see that being, you know, really a strong financial vehicle and a vehicle towards bringing, you know, good prices to those customers. But, you know, that's about as much as I could, you know, kind of come up with, because I'm really more about, you know, delivering those 20 megawatt utility scale projects, which are going to, in fact, be competing with those. And I agree that it, you know, it is going to be challenging for rooftop to beat, you know, a ground mount project of scale like that.
Just to make sure I understood that, you said you're going to start getting into construction and fabrication. Is that the idea is that NRG is going to move upstream into manufacturing of components?
Yeah, we are. Not into, you know, manufacturing of inverters and panels and that kind of thing, but we are, you know, working our way up that, you know, up that chain. But we're in the construction space really. That's where we're stepping into.
Interesting. Todd, let me ask you this, because maybe you have the least skin in the game, and then anybody else can step in if they want. Let's address the elephant in the room, the trade petition. You know, your customers presumably are dealing with procurement now. You were dealing with project finance for projects that are in the later stages. Is this impacting what their decision-making was going to be? Are they having to go back a step, or is everyone proceeding as if nothing had happened?
Well, don't have a specific client in the fight right now, but I have a lot of clients on various sides of the fight. So I'll just make a few different observations. The California PPA market is driven by the California module market, and I'm talking utility scale solar projects. And this last year, we had to work extra hard to get a project done, the North Star Solar project, and it was ultimately approved last month by the CPUC. During that time, the time at which it was negotiated and executed and pending before the commission, between October of 2010, when it was executed and filed in November, in June, the module prices dropped over 20%, and the PPA prices dropped over 20%. This is just 6 months. And this caused all sorts of policy issues and whatnot. And so we started sort of having to peel back and to find out what's really happening. And what happens is in the global market, this is no great surprise, is that there is an overproduction or an excess of capacity, which is working its way through the system. And when, you know, in some parts of the world, you have manufacturing at $1.10, $1.15 per watt, and you know that there's sales going on in this country for less than 90 cents a watt, well, somebody's not covering costs. Is that dumping? I don't think legally, you know, we know quite the answer, and I don't even think it's so much of a legal answer as it's going to be a political answer that gets negotiated as part of a reckoning of the relationship or a growing of the relationship between China and the United States and other parts. So I see that playing out. I think it is going to have a dampening effect. It's already having a dampening effect on module prices, from what I can tell. And I think it's going to be playing out, but there's so many other things that are going on right now. It's just one of a handful of things that are making the market extra dynamic at this point. But I would expect that Rhone probably has a pretty good view on what might happen politically as well.
Well, to add, I think, to the uncertainty is you have the potential expiration of 1603, right? So everybody's trying to get 5% in the ground by the end of the year. Well, where's that other 95% going to come from, and is there going to be a higher charge for it down the road? I think that, I think certainly the manufacturers are well aware of the uncertainty and the concerns of their customers, and they're figuring out solutions across the board. I think that if there is a tariff that comes back, regardless of size, it's a very short-term kind of impact on the U.S. market, and the Chinese manufacturers will figure out how to get around this. There's no doubt. I mean, this only affects panels that are assembled in China or that use cells manufactured in China. Cells that are made in Taiwan and assembled in Malaysia, not a problem. You know, manufactured in India, manufactured in any other place around the world other than China, not a problem. And when you look at the global supply of modules available today, the global oversupply, this may just open up the door for bringing other products in. and/or I think the Chinese companies are very smart, and they'll figure out where and how to adjust accordingly. So I don't think it's a long-term impact on the market, even though it'll probably get a lot of press. To Todd's question or point, it is very political. I know that President Hu had two issues to bring to President Obama at the APEC meetings in Hawaii. And one was the solar trade dispute. So there's a lot of pressure. There's a new letter from Markey to Obama, trying to put pressure on taking one side of the case. There's a lot of pressure on Obama to take the other side of the case. At the end of the day, what's going to happen in this political arena is you're going to have those who are running for president scream that we have to, do whatever we can against the Chinese, that the Chinese are cheating, and we have to do everything we can to prevent that. But if you're the incumbent, if you're the sitting president, you know the trade relationships and the important international relationship we have with China. There's no way you can, take a very aggressive stand and undermine the financial underpinnings of this country. You can't do that. So you're going to hear the Republicans really come out hard against China. You're going to see the president negotiate a kind of a broader settlement. I think on this particular trade case, there's room for kind of the two countries as well as the two industries to come together and to hammer out and negotiate a settlement. But you should also know that just today there was an article saying that Solar World is filing in the EU as well. So this is going to be a global kind of issue going forward. I think that it can be resolved politically, though.
Can I comment on as a manufacturer from China? So we're strongly against that kind of acquisition. Well, just give you a couple of facts. Today, we are very actively involved in the project in China. This year, China market alone will reach 2 gigawatts. I think that's, if you calculate, that's a little bit bigger than the U.S. market. And today, if you say dumping, which means you protect your own market and dump your product in some other market, but in China today, the cost was well below, not cost, the system price is already below $2 US, and it's very profitable. So there's a big market in China. China already opened up the market, and everyone can come in and compete. We are very aggressively. We got 200 megawatt pipeline, and we'll build more than close to 100 megawatt this year in China market alone. This is why I said the diversification. But again, when we talk about anti-dumping cases, their home market is big enough. It's equivalent size, similar size of the U.S. market, and also the system price is lower than the U.S. market. So there's we have a lot of strong argument on our side. I'm on the, what's it called, for affordable solar coalition. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, let me ask one more question, sort of going back to the bird's eye view, and then I'll open it up to the audience. Looking at the next few years, we have a lot of things that could come down to dampen growth in the U.S. market. We've talked about a couple of them, but there are probably many more. Let's go down the line and each try to highlight one barrier that you think is maybe the biggest threat to the U.S. market, let's say over a 4 or 5 year time horizon. Maybe we can start down with Todd and then come this way.
Dampen, well, we've mentioned 1603. We've mentioned tax equity and lack of tax equity, and just sheer volume of tax equity, because we've got basically 4+ through 2016 on the ITC, and we intend to use that. I think that one of the biggest things is not actually, I'd like to see addressed is balance of system. And because there's a lot of people that have been wondering when balance of system is going to really start to move down in a way that really starts to get us towards a lower cost point. I don't know whether that, there's some people that says that it can't move down or that it's technological innovation or whatever. And I think that might be part of the reason that NRG is looking at it. I think that there needs to be that development, and if there isn't, the module prices can keep going down and down and down, but if balance of system doesn't start to come down, it's going to, keep us away from the grid parity that really opens up in a post-ITC world. So I think we need to keep moving that along. And that's not really a legal answer so much as, if you take a look at the financing, you need to have the cost to keep coming down to be competitive and to make these things work.
Yeah, you actually addressed, the two things I would put up on the top of the list. Tax, if we're not successful in the extension of the grant. just the sheer volume of tax equity that would be needed, and that is, what is available and the cost of that is a huge barrier if you're living in a world without the ability to, or with the need to have tax appetite to move forward on projects. And then you did also mention balance of plants. So you got me on both of those.
Sorry.
But in the world of panel prices coming down, continuing to decline, balance of service, balance of system costs will become more and more important because they're going to be a larger component of the cost of installation. And in a world where the panel prices go up because there's a lot of markets opening up and no longer have the supply-demand curve working against the panel prices, then you'll have balance of system be very important as well. So it's important in either world, and that is, and I think another factor in there is also in the the innovation that comes with that, and the efficiencies and the performance of that that system and how it operates. So CPV, is it going to be the next great thing? Is there going to be ultra efficient and low cost standard PV panels that are going to come out into the market? Those kind of game-changing technologies are very much needed to keep driving the cost down, because if you don't achieve those installation costs, continuous decline, then I think it'll be a domino effect, right? Kind of the consumer will be less satisfied, and you will have those markets contract. Voluntary markets will contract. Retail access to retail markets won't open up, and I think global and other states, those markets won't open up either. So we just have to drive those costs down. So.
I think it all comes down to policy, and I won't repeat what these guys have said because I completely concur, but I would say it's a suite of market access issues that we have as an industry. So this might be caps on wholesale DG, which will affect certainly the utility scale, 3 to 20 megawatt size projects. It's also net metering, and when you start to looking at distributed generation, either net metering caps or a variety of other tweaks to net metering that limit the ability for us to compete in the marketplace as self-generators. And we're now starting to see kind of a whole shifting with respect to how utilities are, let's just say, charging for your solar to be on the grid, and that could be everything from standby charges to these intermittent generator charges you're seeing down at SDG&E. You're seeing it in Dominion Power and other places where all of a sudden, if you're a homeowner and you got to pay $60 a month because you generate your own electricity, you've just removed a huge part of the economic value equation for going solar. And we're starting to see those pop up around the country. What we also, I think, have to be very smart about as an industry is to look at kind of this shift as we go to a smarter kind of grid. And I'll give you a little personal story on this one, and this is with respect to smart meters, because I think this is something we have never talked about as an industry, and my sample size is unfortunately only one, but it is, I think it's a very real issue, and that is the smart meters that are being installed around the country don't net meter. The vast majority are installed. They do not have the chips in them, the programming in them that allow you as a homeowner or small business to net meter. And so when Pepco installed a smart meter on our house, and I've had solar for 5.5 years now, they installed, one of these Silver Spring smart meters. So I went out 2 weeks later to see how it's doing, and it said I was using, I don't know, like 200 kilowatt hours in those first 2 weeks. And I said, that's crazy. And I went back and checked my Fat Spaniel system, and it said I'd actually generated about 70 kilowatt hours more than I'd actually consumed. And so I went out on a sunny day to kind of take a look at what it said, and when I should be net metering, my meter said error, error, error. So all of a sudden I called Pepco and I said, what the hell is this? And they said, oh, well, we install as a default smart meters that don't net meter. I said, but the law requires you to offer net metering to any consumer who wants it. They said, well, that's fine. And here we have, we have billions of, I'm like, well, it's not. So it took me about 4 months to get my smart meter replaced, and that's only because I was tracking this thing on a real-time basis, and I thought it was a real issue. Most homeowners aren't going to have that capability to do it. It's a real issue for Solar City and a lot of others, but when I look at this and this isn't just Pepco. This same thing's happening in California. I've heard it's happening in New York State and places around the country. Nobody's written on it. It's a real issue for us, and what really makes me angry is, billions of dollars went to the utilities to support installation of smart meters around the country through the Recovery Act. They get a tax credit as well, and then they build it into the rate base. Pepco's asking for a $48 million rate case right now. I got to rush home on Friday in order to deal with this because it's a real concern that they're creating a fundamental barrier to the marketplace. So, long-winded answer, I apologize, but I do think it's all of those market access issues, both from a policy perspective as well as a physical one with the net meters.
Yeah, in addition to what the gentleman already mentioned, I think another important factor, as a manufacturer, I would say choosing the right technology is very important. As a manufacturer, we continue to drive the cost down through innovation, technology, and R&D. However, choosing the right technology is absolutely critical. If you see one cylinder impacting negatively the whole industry. So you can imagine if we choose a wrong technology and have a fatal mistake on certain big park and big farm, and the bank will get nervous and the investor get nervous. I think that's something we have to pay attention to.
Great. We have time for, I think, just one or two questions from the audience. We've got one right here. There's a mic coming to your left.
Thank you. My name is Nick Fagoni. I'm with Ecology and Environment, and we do permitting for utility-scale power plants. And my question is for Rhone. We're seeing a lot of pushback where originally we were doing projects on large swaths of desert and impacting endangered species. The industry has moved to farmland, and now we're seeing pushback from farm bureaus and Department of Conservation, things like that. What is SEIA doing at the national level to engage with the agricultural industry and the agricultural lobby?
It's a great question. We have a whole committee that's focused on siting and permitting issues with respect to utility scale, and it's a very, very active group. Right now, the irony of ironies is we're getting more opposition from the environmental community than we are from the farm bureaus and a lot of the kind of the local agricultural community. And there was a programmatic EIS that was released last week, 2 weeks, I forget now, and we got shafted. They basically took all of the recommendations from the environmental community and none from the solar industry. So we've been pretty public about that, and we're orchestrating, at least in this particular case, a sit-down between the Department of Interior and the environmental community to rectify what's in the PEIS right now. But with respect to the farm bureaus, we are absolutely connected with them, mostly on the national level, unfortunately, and not as much on the local level. But I would very much welcome your suggestions, Nick, on how we as an industry can partner more with them, because when you look at what wind has done in the agriculture community, which is basically given them a new product to harvest, which is wind, and it's a huge, let's just say, financial benefit for a lot of the farmers or landowners in those areas, solar can be as well. And so I think it's definitely a model to follow.
One more question, right here.
My name is Song Yuan with GCL, and we are a developer and a system provider. I have a question for Astronergy. I mean, the anti-dumping case is coming. It's real, and I was wondering what kind of measures you are taking to address that issue, short-term and long-term.
That's a very good question. I got the same assignment from my chairman of the board as well. So I think short-term we are actually actively involved in the, talk to our legal counsel and involved in this, the legal battle and how to win. In the meantime, like one of, today, actually yesterday and today, our chairman also, as part of a Chinese delegation, meeting with the U.S. government, and he will address this the fair trade in Washington, because as I earlier already talked about, this is the acquisition was like groundless. But in the longer term, we have been considering setting up a certain manufacturing facility in the U.S. because as the panel price continue to decrease, the transportation logistic costs actually play more important higher percentage in the overall cost. It starts to make sense. However, what we have been seeing in different part of the U.S. is the infrastructure, manufacturing infrastructure is not immediately ready, and it's not that effective compared with what already been built in in China. But we are actively looking for the manufacturing space, and like bringing our higher technology type of manufacturing like thin film. So that's we are thinking about that. But in the meantime, we also look at the place like Mexico or certain NAFTA area that we can build a manufacturing facility. Yeah, that's longer term. Yeah.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking the panel. We're going to take a break for lunch right now. As I said before, there should be buffets out in both directions. You'll eat at the table.